Please subscribe to the channel for more calming historical documentaries and comment below. What time is it and where are you listening from? The Nile drifts silently past the reed-choked banks. It is early, the kind of early where even the ibis do not move, where the wind has yet to stretch its limbs, where light sits just beneath the horizon waiting. And in this hushed cradle of an ancient world, a girl wakes to the scratch of her own breath and the soft weight of linen pressed against her skin. She is not royalty. Her name will not be carved into walls or sung in temple rituals. She will not be remembered. But her life, her ordinary, unyielding life, is the kind lived by most women in ancient Egypt. It is not gilded. It is not adorned with perfumes and golden collars. It is the sound of a clay jug clinking against a stone basin. It is aching knees and fingers stained with barley dust. It is obedience wrapped in linen and silence. She is 13 years old. She lives in a modest mud-brick home near Waset, what later centuries will call Thebes. Her family are farmers. Her skin is darkened from sun and river silt. Her hair is kept short, easier to manage in the heat, easier to control. Her mother, stern, quiet, strong, wakes her before the sun touches the bricks. Today is no different from yesterday, nor will tomorrow be different from today. Before the day begins, she prays, not loudly, not with spectacle, a whispered offering, to Taweret, the goddess who guards women and childbirth. She has not yet bled, but it is coming. She has seen the signs in her older sister. She has heard the whispers from women returning from the well. The blood will change everything. Outside, the village is slowly unfurling. The baker begins to heat his kiln. Smoke rises in a crooked line into the soft blue. Men carry bundles of flax. Children still sleep, unaware of the years stretching ahead. She does not linger. She knows better. Water first. The Nile is never far. A short walk barefoot over packed dust. The river is a lifeline and a threat. Crocodiles do not care for the worries of women. They wait, still and black-eyed. But she has done this since she could carry a pot. Fill, balance, return. It is the rhythm of survival. By mid-morning, the courtyard hums with activity. She grinds barley beside her mother. The stone quern is worn and smooth, back and forth, back and forth. Her fingers are calloused, her arms strong despite their thinness. This is womanhood in Egypt, not in crowns or chants, but in chores that never end. Her father does not speak much. He does not need to. His rules are understood. When he enters, she lowers her eyes. When he eats, she waits until he is finished. When he sleeps, the house softens into breathless stillness. She has never been struck, but she has seen others who have. Her friend, Menet, has a bruise along her jaw. She spoke over her brother, the rumor went. That was enough. Evenings are quieter. The heat lifts. The sky darkens with long violet streaks. She listens as her mother tells her about her own girlhood, about marriage, about how to keep a man pleased, about what to do if he turns cold. The words are practical, not romantic. There is no fantasy here. Only warnings passed down like heirlooms. Soon she will bleed, and then she will be eligible. Eligible, the word is sharp in her mind. It does not feel like a blessing, it feels like a beginning she does not want. Eligible means her father will begin to make arrangements. Eligible means men will begin to look at her differently. Eligible means no more freedom to wander to the river alone. She does not know his name yet. The man she will marry. He could be 15. He could be 30. Age is not the concern of families. Dowry is, honor is. He must be a man with land or trade, a man who can take care of her so that she becomes another man's responsibility. She wonders if he will be kind. In a nearby house, a woman screams. It is not fear, it is birth. The cries are raw, almost animal. Her mother glances that way but does not rise. Birth is a women's realm. And women's realms are not urgent in this world. The screaming continues until it fades. A baby cries, thin and new, then quiet again. She asks no questions. She is learning, in silence, always learning. At night, she lays on a mat beside her sister. They whisper sometimes, about the man with the crooked tooth who sells fish, about the noblewoman who passed by in a chariot once, her eyeliner drawn like a falcon's wing, about what it feels like to bleed for the first time. Her sister does not answer, only turns and sleeps. She dreams sometimes of the great halls, of golden halls and scented oils, of soft hands and music. But she always wakes to dust and the slap of sandals outside. Her life is not a temple story. It is a footnote in a larger scroll. Tomorrow she will go to the market with her mother. She will carry onions and dried fish in a woven basket. She will not speak unless spoken to. She will avoid the eyes of men. She will hear their laughter and pretend not to understand. And when she returns, she will once again grind the barley, clean the basin, sweep the floor, listen to her father's instructions, and fold the linens tight. This is not a life chosen. It is a life inherited, and it is only just beginning. The next day dawns without color, just a soft gray stretching above the reeds, as if the sun is hesitant to shine too brightly on what the day will hold. The girl wakes before the roosters, her thin linen blanket tangled at her feet, her breath shallow and silent. In the courtyard, dew clings to clay jars and rough-woven baskets. Her mother is already up. She always is. The girl doesn't speak. Words are a luxury in the morning, and there is too much to do. She rubs her eyes and wraps a sash around her waist. Her sister still sleeps, curled in a way that makes her seem much younger than she is. Soon she too will wake, but not yet. Her mother hands her a satchel, coarse palm fiber rope tied at the shoulder. Inside, onions, dried dates, and a bundle of cloth. They are heading to the market today, just as her mother had promised. The market is not far, but it feels like another world, crowded, loud, always shifting like the river itself. There, women are visible, briefly, but still watched. She does not like being watched. They step onto the path, narrow and uneven, where footprints from 100 mornings have already worn deep grooves into the earth. Her feet move without thought. This path is in her bones. Chickens scatter before them. A boy, perhaps 5 years old, runs past dragging a stick through the dust. His mother yells after him in that tired, familiar tone of discipline wrapped in love. The market smells of fish and old linen. The sun, now rising, bakes the clay underfoot. Flies gather, persistent and brave. Her mother finds a spot, unrolls the cloth, and begins arranging their goods. The girl kneels quiet, her eyes downward. This is not a place for wandering stares or curious questions. This is a place to trade, to listen, and to learn. Voices rise in all directions. A potter arguing with a fisherman over last week's debt. A woman praising her honey as sweeter than lotus nectar, though the flies don't seem convinced. A nobleman's servant walks by, his tunic white and freshly pressed, his nose slightly wrinkled as he passes the vendor selling pig meat. He doesn't stop, he doesn't need to. The girl watches everything, though carefully, never too directly, just enough. This is how women survive here. They read the lines between what is said. They memorize the weight of footsteps. They notice where the guards linger and where the drunkards tend to stumble. 3 onions for that, a woman says to her mother, pointing to the basket of dates. Her mother nods once. A fair deal. Not great, but fair. The girl thinks silently about the nobles, the ones in the painted tombs, arms crossed, eyes large, always looking somewhere far off. Do they ever worry about onions? Do their daughters carry satchels and watch flies gather on salted fish? Later, when the crowd begins to thin, her mother takes her to the side of the square. There is a row of clay jars, cheap but well made. The seller is a man in his 50s, bald except for a thin wisp of hair at the crown, hands dark with clay residue. He smiles too much. Her mother does not smile back. "This one?" he says, lifting a jug for display. Her mother nods again. Price is discussed, agreed, traded, but the man does not stop speaking. "How old is she?" he asks too casually. Her mother does not answer. "She's nearly a woman, yes?" he continues. "A hard worker, I can tell." The girl's fingers tighten around the satchel. Her eyes stay on the ground. Her stomach feels like it's trying to fold in on itself. "We'll go," her mother says finally. Not loud, not with anger, just final. And they do. They walk quickly now, past the dye cellar, past the young, men laughing by the palm carts, past the temple steps where the priests chant their morning verses. The world does not care that the girl's breath is shaking slightly. The sun continues rising. The market continues buzzing. The jug seller finds someone else to talk to. When they return home, her sister is gone, sent off to help a neighbor prepare bread for a ceremony. Funerary, likely. There are always funerals. Her mother does not speak of the man. She simply lays out the goods and begins sorting. The girl helps, silent. Her hands move, but her mind is caught in that moment. The way the man's eyes lingered, the way her mother's voice cut like a reed blade. Later, as they prepare the evening meal, her father returns. He smells of sweat and wood smoke. He eats first. The girls wait. Then they eat, careful not to leave too little or too much. Waste is not tolerated, nor is greed. After the meal, her father speaks with her mother in low tones by the doorway. She catches only a few words. Meku, daughter. 3 goats. She knows the name Meku. He is a man who owns land near the river's bend, widowed, older, but not old. His wife died in childbirth 3 years ago. He has no sons. Only 2 daughters, one married, one still a child, 3 goats. That's her worth, then. She does not cry. Crying would do nothing. Later that night, after her sister returns and the house settles into its usual nighttime hush, she lies awake staring at the ceiling beams. They're crooked in places, patched with older wood. She counts them. 1, 2, 3. Again. 1, 2, 3. She cannot sleep. Her sister stirs beside her. "You heard?" she asks, voice a whisper. The girl nods. "Meku." "He's not cruel," her sister offers. "They say he keeps his dogs better than most men keep wives. It is meant to comfort. It doesn't." "I don't want to leave," the girl says. Her voice cracks barely. Her sister takes her hand. "None of us do, but we go anyway." They fall asleep like that, fingers linked, breath slow. The Nile whispering its dark lullaby just beyond the walls. Somewhere outside a jackal calls, and the stars wheel above like gods pretending not to see. There are no seasons in this part of Egypt, not in the way the future will measure them. There is only the shift in the wind, the tilt of the sun, the quiet announcement of time through river swell and grain readiness. And as the girl, still, not yet a woman, though that border grows thinner by the hour, moves through her mornings, the weight of change moves with her. It's quieter now, in the days since the market. The courtyard feels more hollow. Her sister hums less. Her mother sighs more. Her father has spoken of little but the weather and goats, which in this place means a decision has already been made. The girl has not asked what day she will leave. She knows it will be soon. No one has said it out loud, but she sees it in the way her belongings have been folded more carefully, the way the oil has been applied more generously to her hair, the way the house has begun treating her not as a daughter, but as a guest about to be sent somewhere else. The mornings continue, always the same, always different. The Nile still rises with warmth clinging to its breath. Ducks scatter near the reed beds. Clay pots gather condensation like tiny beads of sorrow. She walks to the edge of the water each morning to wash her arms and face, the same way her mother once did, and her grandmother before her. She stares into her reflection. It doesn't speak. The day of preparation arrives without fanfare. Her mother brings out an old box from the back of the storeroom. Inside, wrapped in linen yellowed by years, are small things: 2 copper bracelets, uneven but beautiful, a polished comb made from bone, a little alabaster jar with a cracked lid, still carrying the ghost of scented oil inside. These were mine, her mother says quietly, not explaining more. There is no ceremony. The items are placed in a basket and handed to her, not as gifts, but as necessities, tools for the life she must now enter. Midday stretches long. The house smells of baking wheat, of water boiled with cinnamon bark, an indulgence. Her sister prepares dates with ground almonds, her fingers moving with memory. Her mother sews a small tear in one of her sashes. No one speaks of why they are doing these things, but everything says goodbye. The sun begins to lean westward. At dusk the man arrives. His name is Meku, and he carries the posture of someone who has seen too much sun and too little joy. His face is weathered, his robes simple. He has brought with him 2 goats and a clay jug of beer. The 3rd goat, the one promised, will come when the girl does. He does not speak much. He glances at her only once. Later, when he has gone, and the courtyard has settled back into shadows, the girl sits quietly beside the hearth, her hands tucked under her knees. She is not crying. She is not speaking. She is only breathing slowly, as though she is learning how to do it again. That night, her dreams are heavy. She dreams of the river pulling her downward, not violently, not like a storm, but with a slow, patient pull, like a mother's hand on a child's shoulder. She sinks beneath the water and finds herself in a place where reeds grow upside down and the moon hums just beneath the surface. There are voices there, female voices, chanting, praying, weeping, whispering. She doesn't understand the words, but she feels them in her ribs, like soft stones placed inside her. When she wakes, her arms ache. The morning is ordinary, painfully so. The house wakes. The chickens stir. A dog barks somewhere far off. Her sister presses a kiss to her forehead and does not linger. There is no wedding, not really. Not for people like her. There is only transition. A few words, an agreement witnessed, a meal shared, and then a new bed in a new place. She walks the path with her father and Meku, her belongings tied neatly in cloth. The sun is warm. Her feet ache slightly. No one speaks. The dust curls around her ankles in soft little spirals. Meku's home is larger than hers. 3 rooms, an enclosed courtyard. There is a dog tied near the back wall, his bark sharp but restrained. There is a girl, perhaps 8, playing with shells in a basin. She glances up but does not smile. The girl who has arrived is not a sister. She is something else. Meku's voice is firm but not cruel. He shows her where she will sleep. He points to the basin, the grain, the oil press. He mentions what time. He rises. He does not ask what she wants. It is not cruel. It is just the way of things. Her first night there is long. The walls feel too smooth, the ceiling too quiet. She lies on the mat and listens to the night insects drone, to the occasional snore from across the wall. She holds the little bone, comb under her pillow like a secret. Over the next days her world contracts. She learns the pattern of the place, when to sweep, when to grind, when to feed the dog. Meku is gone often, working his land by the river. The younger daughter, Neheret, watches everything. She does not speak often, but her eyes are wide and curious. The girl tends the grain. She soaks the cloth. She learns which vessels leak and which ones lie. She watches the sky at dusk for patterns she doesn't yet understand. She bleeds for the first time on the 6th day. It happens without warning, though she had been expecting it. Her body curled, stomach tight, a heat in her thighs. She sits on the floor of the washroom and waits. The blood is dark, thick. It makes her dizzy to look at it. But she does not scream. She does not call. She wraps herself in cloth and cleans. What needs to be cleaned? No one marks the moment but her. It is, in its quietness, more frightening than anything she has felt before. That night, Meku places his hand on her shoulder at supper. Not roughly, but firmly. She nods, not looking up. Later, when the fire dims and Neheret is asleep, she lies on the mat and waits. She does not cry. The moon is very full that night, and far too bright. If you are enjoying, please give it a like and subscribe the channel for more. The days after her first bleeding unfold like threads slipping through her fingers, thin, slow, unbroken. Time in this place does not move in sudden steps, but in long sighs. Nothing is announced. No one congratulates her. No garlands are placed around her shoulders. But everything changes. She is no longer a girl. That is what the blood means. Not in name, not in spirit, but in duty. And so the rhythms shift. Before she had swept the floor and soaked the lentils. Now she kneads the dough while Meku watches from the doorway, not always speaking. Before, she carried water with her head down. Now she is expected to measure oil with precision and be present when guests visit. Not to speak, but to serve. To be seen in just the right way, not too bold, not too shy. Even Neheret notices. The little girl no longer sits as close in the evening. She folds her arms and watches with a strange expression, half curiosity, half resentment, as though the girl had turned into someone else, someone adult and therefore unknowable. She has been given a new sash, dyed with ochre. It is plain, but well made. She wears it over her linen dress, which is always just slightly too loose across. The shoulders. She's still growing, but no one mentions that. Growth here is silent. Meku continues to rise early. His steps are always the same, measured, slow, dry with dust. He does not shout. He does not praise. He simply expects. And expectation can be heavier than any stone. There is a basin near the courtyard wall. It catches rain when it comes, which is rare, and collects the wash water during most days. She has begun to clean herself there in the afternoons, after the house quiets and Neheret is napping. There is no privacy in her new life, not really, but she has learned to carve out minutes. Small, quiet minutes that belong to her and no one else. In those minutes, she scrubs the soles of her feet. She smooths her hair with fingers slicked in oil. She closes her eyes and leans her head back toward the weak sun, breathing in the dust and the faint smell of fennel that drifts from the neighbor's garden. And in those minutes, she remembers the rhythm of her old house, the way the chickens scurried in the morning, the scratch of her sister's laughter, the way her mother sighed as she stirred the lentils, always with the same wooden spoon. Memory is strange here. It comes not in thoughts, but in movements. Her hands still knead bread the same way her mother's did. Her eyes still scan the ground for snakes without thinking. Her breath still catches whenever she hears footsteps behind her. These are the inherited memories. The kind passed down not in stories, but in muscle and silence. One morning the priest walks past their home. He is not there for them, not exactly. He is traveling through, collecting offerings for the temple. His robes are long, dyed with indigo, and ringed with ochre bands. His hair is shaved smooth, his eyes outlined in kohl. Behind him trails a boy carrying a woven basket filled with dates and dried fish. The priest pauses at their threshold. He says a few words in greeting. Meku bows slightly, offers a handful of dried figs. The priest accepts, and his eyes move, briefly, to her, not in desire, but in assessment, like a merchant examining a vase. Later, Meku says she will come to the temple next week to assist with a blessing ceremony. She does not ask why. She nods. It is the first time she has left the house since arriving. The temple is not large, but to her it feels vast. It smells of myrrh and limestone. The walls are carved with images of gods, Anubis weighing hearts, Isis with her wings outstretched, Hathor with her sun-disk crown. There are no images of women like her, just divine shapes, perfect bodies. Eyes that never blink. She helps carry offerings from the storage room to the altar. Dried herbs, barley, figs, small jars of oil. The priest does not speak to her, only gestures. She understands, that's enough. Near the altar, another girl is working, older, maybe 17. Her face is serious but kind. She glances over. Once and in a brief moment, without words, there is recognition. A kind of silent nod that says, "Yes, I know. You are one of us now." They do not speak, but the look lingers. Later, as they leave the temple, her arms sore from lifting, her mind turns. Is this it? She wonders. Is this all there is? The days begin folding into one another again. Quiet, repetitive, shaped by hunger and duty. She learns how to dry reeds for thatching, how to bind palm fiber to seal a crack in the wall, how to light a fire even when the wind is stubborn. She bleeds again and again. Each time she prepares the cloth, washes it with lemon ash, dries it near the edge of the courtyard where no one can see. It is not discussed, it is only noticed. She sees the way Meku watches her more intently now, calculating. He is not cruel, but his silence is not gentle. Some nights she lies awake and listens to Neheret's breathing. The child still sucks her thumb in sleep. Her hair has begun to curl, more tightly like their mothers must have. She sometimes talks in her dreams, little babbles about birds or the dog or grain falling from the basket. It comforts the girl more than anything else, not because it is sweet, but because it is normal. There is a rhythm to survival here. It is not about escape. It is not about rebellion. It is about listening, watching, learning the flows of the household and slipping between them like a reed between rocks. She has become invisible in the exact way expected of her. But in the quiet spaces, in the pauses between grinding and sweeping, in the shadowed corners of the courtyard where the light doesn't fully reach, she is still herself. She begins humming as she works. She begins braiding the edge of her sash in moments of boredom. She begins hiding small pebbles in her mat, just to feel them beneath her skin when she sleeps, tiny anchors to remind herself that she still chooses something, even if it's just the shape of her discomfort. And sometimes, just before dawn, she sits near the wall and writes in the dust with her fingertip. Not words. She cannot write, just shapes, spirals, waves, lines that curve and bend like the river, and then she wipes them away before the sun sees them. Because here women do not need stories. They are the silence between the stories. They are the space that carries the weight. They are the ones who remember, even when no one else does. The mornings in Meiku's household begin earlier now. Not because the sun rises sooner, it doesn't, but because the work has stretched itself into new shapes. With the cooler season approaching, the air clings more softly to the walls. The light comes in low and sideways, throwing long shadows across the courtyard and turning simple baskets into shapes of art. But beauty is not something she notices much anymore. Not in the usual way. Instead, she notices the weight of the pestle when the grain is coarser. She notices the color of oil when it turns too bitter. She notices the change in the dog's bark before visitors come. These are the senses sharpened not by wonder, but by repetition. It has been 2 months since she left her old home. She no longer counts the days. It would not help. Time here is not measured in weeks. It is measured in clean linens, in meals, prepared in silences endured. Her skin has grown darker. Her voice has grown softer. Her mind, however, has not quieted. She still listens to the river, though from farther away now. The house is set slightly above the bank, where reeds don't gather as thick, and where the path to water winds downward through groves of tamarisk and acacia. Sometimes, when Meiku is gone, she walks halfway down the path and stops, just to listen, just to remember the hum of water as it slips past. Neret walks with her now more often. The child has grown less wary. She asks questions. What do fish eat? Why do dragonflies float and not fall? Do goats dream? She answers gently, sometimes with truth, sometimes with silence. There is safety in silence. In the afternoons, they dry, lentils on broad mats, spreading them out with their hands and chasing away birds with short claps. The sun heats their backs. Their hands move like dancers, fluid and tireless. The girl doesn't speak during this time. Her thoughts drift. She thinks of her mother, how her back always seemed to ache. She remembers her sister's way of folding, cloth into perfect squares. She tries to recreate that precision now, but her edges are not yet as smooth. She wonders if she ever will be. She dreams often, more now than before. Not of escape, but of odd, slow things. Of frogs climbing into her hands, of a door that opens into water, of stars that hum her name in a voice she doesn't recognize. When she wakes, there's a moment, just one, where she doesn't know where she is. And then she does. One evening, just after the sun has dipped beneath the wall and the courtyard is painted in a soft ochre twilight, Meiku speaks. There will be guests. He doesn't say when or how many, only that they are coming. She prepares. She grinds more grain than usual. She draws water from the basin twice. She lays out her cleanest sash and oils her arms. This is what women do. They prepare for what? They are not told. And they do so perfectly, or they are blamed. The guests arrive 2 days later. 2 men, both older than Meiku. One walks with a slight limp and carries a staff bound with copper at the top. The other has rings on all fingers but says little. Their sandals are new and they smell faintly of imported incense. They eat slowly. They drink quickly. They laugh in short bursts. She serves them without comment, pouring beer and offering salted fish. Her head bowed, her arms steady. She does not make eye contact. She listens. They talk of land, of the coming harvest, of a neighbor's dispute over a boundary stone, of how many men a field needs to till it properly. And then one of them gestures toward her, a simple nod, casual, forgettable. She does well, one says. Meku replies with something she doesn't quite hear. They do not speak of her again. That night, after the guests are gone, and the mats have been swept, and the dog has stopped barking, she sits near the threshold of the courtyard and breathes. The stars above are sharp tonight, clear and white, like chalk pressed into dark linen. She listens. The wind rustles the reeds beyond the wall. Somewhere far off, a hippo bellows from the river. She doesn't sleep much that night, not because of fear, but because of questions. She wonders if her mother ever sat like this, if she too stared into a sky that never answered. In the days that follow, life continues. Meku becomes quieter, not cold, just inward. He rises early, leaves before dawn, returns only at dusk. His words are few. His hands rest more often on the dog's back than on the table. Something turns in him, slowly, as all things do here. She watches it happen without asking why, and she begins carving shapes again, not in dust this time, but into a soft piece of wood she found near the well, an old pestle, discarded and cracked. She hides it under the sleeping mat. Each night when Neret sleeps, she pulls it out and carves with a tiny chipped flint. Lines, waves, dots. A story, maybe, or just shapes. She does not know yet, but the rhythm of carving calms her. It gives her something. One morning Meku does not rise. She waits, then knocks lightly. Still nothing. She brings water, waits again. He stirs eventually, moves slowly, his face pale, his steps uncertain. He waves her off when she offers to help. That afternoon, he lies down again. She brings him tea made from boiled date stems. He drinks it without words. That evening, he eats only a few bites of bread. Days pass like that. He walks less, speaks even less. The girl watches and wonders. She is not a healer, but she listens. And the body speaks. A week later, a woman arrives, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a thick linen robe, a healer from the village's edge. Meku had sent for her. The woman enters, inspects him, nods once. He is not dying, she says, without ceremony, not yet, and then she leaves. The girl resumes her work, but now there is something else, a layer of waiting, a hush inside the house that wasn't there before. Not fear, but knowing. The knowing that comes when a tree leans too far toward the water, and no one needs to say it will fall. She does not wish for his death, but she does not dread it either. She feels only stillness. Stillness is what she understands best. One morning, Meku calls for her. His voice is dry, weaker than usual. She enters. He sits on the mat, wrapped in cloth, his eyes sunken. He looks at her, longer than usual. "You've done well," he says. And that is all. It is more than she expected. When she leaves the room, she doesn't cry. She kneads the bread and sings softly under her breath. The dog watches her, ears tilted. Neret plays with pebbles near the steps, and in her pocket the carved wood waits, half-finished, meaningless to anyone else, but hers, entirely hers. The dog dies first. It's not dramatic. No whimpering, no blood. Just one morning, the courtyard is quiet in a different way. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that has been scrubbed clean of all breath. She finds the dog curled beside the clay basin, eyes closed, legs tucked under its ribs like a sleeping goat, except it doesn't wake. Neret cries, not loudly, but with the kind of confusion only a child can carry, the sudden break in the rhythm of something that was supposed to always be there. The girl sits beside her. She doesn't say the things children are told in gentler worlds, that he's just sleeping, that he's gone to join the gods. She simply places a hand on Neret's back and stays there until the sun rises fully above the courtyard wall. They bury him near the tamarisk tree. No offerings, no chants, just a hole carved into dust with flat stones and bare hands. The earth folds back over the body, soft and warm like a final blanket, and life moves on. It always does. Meku doesn't leave his sleeping mat that day. The house takes on a stillness even the insects respect. By mid-afternoon, the girl has prepared lentils, swept the inner threshold twice, and refolded every linen. No one asked her to, but when the world stops giving orders, the body continues the rituals it remembers. Movement becomes memory made real. When dusk falls, Meku calls for water. She brings it in silence. He drinks, then rests again. That night, the stars are out early, bright, indifferent. She sits in the corner of the courtyard with her knees tucked to her chest, watching the night stretch out like an endless roll of cloth. The carved wood in her pocket feels heavier now. She takes it out, not to work on it, just to hold. Its edges are smoothed now, sanded by thumb and time. The marks across its surface mean nothing to anyone, but to her they are days. Each line, a task completed, each dot a moment endured. She has not spoken about it to anyone, not even Neret. It is not for sharing. The next morning, Meku doesn't speak. She feeds him a broth of dates and boiled millet. He takes 3 slow spoonfuls, then turns his head away. She knows now. Death in this house is no longer a distant thing. It's not a visitor coming someday, it is here, sitting quietly in the corner, waiting without impatience. She doesn't fear it, but it changes things. That afternoon, a neighbor arrives, a woman with wide feet and a quick step. She brings figs and a small jar of barley beer. She doesn't linger, just glances at Meku through the doorway, then nods with that tight, wordless knowing shared among people who have watched others die slowly. Later, 2 more women come. One offers to help sweep. The other checks the grain stores. No one talks about death, but everything done speaks it. That night, the girl sits by Meku's side. He watches her. His breath is shallow, like wind moving through straw. He lifts a hand and points toward the wall, then closes his eyes. She looks. There is nothing there but cracked clay and a strip of linen hung to dry. But perhaps in the end, that's all one sees. The edges of a world slipping back into dust. He dies before the 3rd rooster crow. There is no scream, no rattle, just the fading of breath into the silence already waiting for it. She doesn't cry. There is no time for that yet. Death in Egypt is never private. It opens a door, and the village steps through. By morning, the house is filled with footsteps and voices. Neret is taken to a neighbor's home. The girl prepares the body. She washes his arms with river water, wraps the limbs in linen, anoints the forehead with oil. These rituals were never formally taught to her, but every woman knows them. Passed down not in words but in repetition, in watching, in waiting. He is not embalmed. That is for the rich. But he will be honored. By midday, the body is carried To the edge of the village, where the ground is dry and the graves dug deep enough to keep jackals away, a priest chants something under his breath, more gesture than meaning. Dust is thrown, the grave filled, and then he is gone. Just like the dog, just like everything else. The girl walks home alone. She doesn't stop, doesn't speak. Her feet know the path. Her shadow follows without complaint. At the door she pauses. It is her house now. Not officially. There will be men who come to say otherwise. But for this day, for this breath, it is hers. Inside, the walls are quiet. The clay jugs lean against each other as they always have. The fire pit still smells faintly of morning bread. A bee hums near the threshold. Nothing mourns. Everything waits. She kneels, takes the carved wood from her pocket, and begins carving again new lines, not for days survived, but for what comes next. Because now there is no Meku, no father, no husband, only her and the child. She sits with that knowledge as the sun slides slowly across the sky, casting long, thin shadows that crawl across the floor, like memories returning home. She does not move. She listens to the wind, to her breath, to the silence. And for the first time in weeks, she begins to imagine something other than survival. The morning after Meku's burial arrives not with grief, but with responsibility. No mourning period is granted to a girl without title. There are no black veils, no chorus of lamenting women, no strings of offerings left at her doorstep. In this place, sorrow is not a performance. It is something quieter, bound into the body and carried like clay jars, balanced, breakable, and unseen by most. She wakes before Neret. The house is unusually still, as if the walls themselves are hesitant to speak without their master. Dust settles gently in corners, unbothered by sweeping feet. The sky beyond the small courtyard is pale and indifferent. She washes her face, her arms, her hands. She braids her hair into 3 tight rows and ties a new sash around her waist. One of the neighbors had gifted it, a kindness wrapped in obligation. The cloth is rougher than her old one. She ties it tighter. There is no time to wait for someone to tell her what must be done. Water must still be fetched. The goat must still be fed. Neret must still be tended to, her hair oiled, her food prepared, her questions answered with a tenderness the world will not give her later. The girl slips through the door and walks the narrow path to the river. Her steps are measured. There is no fear now, only awareness. The reeds do not hiss, the birds do not scatter. The river is itself, eternal, moving, unconcerned. She fills the jar, balances it on her shoulder and returns. The jar does not shake. Her arm does not tremble. By the time she returns, Neret is awake and sitting cross-legged in the courtyard, tracing shapes into the dust with her finger. Where is he? The child asks. She doesn't answer, but she kneels beside her and draws a spiral in the dust. Here, she says, always here. It is not truth, but it is comfort. And that now is her role. By mid-morning, a man comes. He wears a blue sash and smells of travel, dust and sweat and dried figs. His shoulders are broad, his mouth set in the grim shape of someone who delivers news and expects no reply. He says that Meku had owed grain to a merchant in the northern village, that his land must be inspected, that he has no heir. The girl stands with her hands folded. Neret peers from behind her dress. The man's eyes pass over both of them like drifting cloud shadows, quick, uncertain, ultimately unconcerned. He leaves a note pressed with a seal, says, "Someone will come in 2 days." Then he walks away. The girl watches him until the path curves and swallows his figure. She does not move for a long time after. That afternoon, she prepares the house, not for guests, for transition. She unrolls the mats and sweeps the floors twice. She empties Meku's clay jar of barley beer, pours it into the soil near the tamarisk tree. She gathers what cloth remains, folds it, separates, the worn from the usable. Everything that remains must now be counted, because ownership for a woman alone is not a right. It is a fragile claim, one easily denied. When the sun begins to fall, she climbs to the edge of the roof and sits. The wind is low, humming between walls. Neret sleeps below, curled into a ball with one hand tucked beneath her cheek. The girl watches the horizon darken. There is a falcon overhead, gliding in lazy loops. And beyond, near the shadowed bend of the Nile, she sees smoke curling from another home's hearth. Somewhere, another girl is washing lentils. Somewhere, another woman is burying her husband. Somewhere, another child is drawing. Spirals in the dust and waiting for the world to explain itself. She wraps her arms around her knees and rests her chin against them. She is no longer someone's daughter, no longer someone's wife, no longer invisible, but not yet safe. There is power in this space, this moment before others arrive to decide her fate. And for now, that power is hers alone. When the men return, two of them this time, with papers and tired eyes, they speak first to her. Then to each other. She is young, one says. The house is well kept, says the other. No sons? None. They circle the courtyard like jackals measuring whether to bite. She answers when asked. Her voice is low, unemotional. She says, Meku died without a will. She says, Neret has no mother. She says the house has been tended. The fields remain. Watered, the goats fed, the store jars intact. They ask who else lives here. She says only us. They leave before sunset. They do not say what will happen, but they leave without claiming the home. That night she breathes easier, only slightly, but it is enough. She begins building a list in her mind, not of dreams, but of tasks. The door needs repair. The grain stores should be checked. The old rope at the well is fraying. She will mend the clay basin this week. Teach Neret to gather reeds without cutting her fingers. Prepare extra oil in case of visitors. These are not grand plans, but they are hers. Each task, a stitch holding the world in place. Each chore, a quiet defiance against vanishing. And in the evening, when the courtyard is golden and the birds have begun their soft gossip, she carves again. The wood now carries many marks. It no longer resembles a tool or toy. It is a record of days, of survival, of presence. She smooths the newest groove into its surface, then folds it back into cloth, places it beneath the mat, closes her eyes, listens to the wind, to Neret's breathing, to her own heartbeat. And for the first time, she allows herself to believe that maybe she is more than what was chosen for her, that maybe she is building something, not with stone or story, but with quiet and with staying. In the weeks that follow, no one comes. No neighbors bring news, no officials return with decrees. No relatives appear at the threshold asking questions or offering unwanted opinions. It is as if the world beyond the village has forgotten them. And in this forgetting, the girl finds something unfamiliar, something rare. She finds space, not peace. That word doesn't belong here, not truly. But something close to it, a kind of stillness, where her thoughts are no longer constantly preparing for the next intrusion. A silence that does not feel like absence, but like permission. The days stretch. She rises early. Not because she must, but because the dawn has become her companion. The early light, barely skimming the courtyard floor, feels like a secret only. She knows. She sits with it for a few minutes before the first chore begins, the small window of time before the heat returns, before Nehret begins asking questions, before the weight of responsibility tightens around her again like a sash pulled snug. There are new rhythms now, not rituals inherited, but ones she shapes herself. Every third day, she checks the grain pots, tapping them gently to listen for signs of mold or rot. On every fifth, she washes the jars in the river and lets them dry in rows like soldiers standing guard along the wall. She has begun fermenting her own beer, weaker than Meku's stock, but enough to trade if needed. And in the quietest hours, she teaches Nehret things, not grand lessons, not myths or gods, but small knowledge that matters more. How to twist reeds into rope without fraying the ends. How to listen for snakes when near the river. How to hold your silence when men begin talking. The girl does not explain these lessons, she simply shows them. Nehret, still small and light-footed, copies her in everything. She walks the same, sits the same, folds cloth the same way, though not always correctly. She watches the girl carve, though never asks why. Once she tried to imitate, scratching a clay, shard with a twig, but her fingers slipped and she scraped her knuckle. The girl said nothing, simply wiped the blood and handed her a cloth. That was the end of it. They speak little, but they understand each other more than most sisters do. The house continues. Wind pulls dust through the gaps in the roof. Lizards dart along the walls, their claws scratching in tiny bursts. Sometimes, the goat bleats in the middle of the night, and the girl wakes thinking it's something else and something closer to danger, only to find that it is still just a goat with more complaints than sense. But these moments pass. One morning, the river rises, not flooding, not rage, just a slow creeping swell that pushes reeds higher on the bank and turns the water a deeper brown. The girl stands at the edge, water brushing the arches of her feet, and listens. It is rare to see the Nile so quiet, yet so full. There is a calm in its depth, a strength that does not boast. She watches small fish flit in the shallows, watches a dragonfly land on her wrist, rest for 3 breaths, and leave again. There is no one to tell her what this means, but she knows. The river speaks in ways few are, taught to hear. That evening the neighbor woman returns, the same one who brought figs during Meku's final days. She doesn't ask permission. She steps inside with a pot of olives and a small clay jar of honey and places them on the threshold. "You've kept the house," she says. "It is not a question." The girl nods. The woman sits. They do not talk about Meku, or about inheritance, or men. Instead, they share food and sip water from the same cup. The woman asks about Nehret's age, her appetite, her health. She comments on the patches the girl made on the outer wall, nods approvingly at the fresh weaving over the thatch. Before she leaves, she reaches into her robe and pulls out something small, a copper ring dulled by time. "Not for trade," she says, "for keeping." The girl hesitates, then takes it. She doesn't wear it. She places it near the carved wood under her mat. She will decide its purpose later. In the days after, other women begin to appear. Not many, not all at once, but enough. One brings a basket of dried onions and stays to help grind grain. Another asks for help mending a robe and pays in dried fish. A third brings a child, feverish and shaking, and the girl makes a poultice with soaked leaves and mud, the way she once saw her mother do. The child recovers. Slowly. No one calls her a healer, but they begin to treat her like one. The knowledge comes not from books, not from priests, but from watching, from remembering, from paying attention. And now for the first time that knowledge is no longer a burden to carry in silence. It is a form of presence, a way to matter. At night she carves again. The wood is nearly full now. The shapes are no longer random. She has begun carving small figures, not faces, but hands, eyes, paths, a woman carrying a pot, a child sitting beside her, a house, small, square, with reed thatching. She does not call it art, it is not meant for that, but it is memory made visible, proof that she has lived these days, that she has shaped them, and that they shaped her one night as she finishes the final row. Neret stirs from sleep and watches. "Is that us?" she asks, pointing to the smallest carving. The girl doesn't answer right away. She traces the line with her fingertip, then nods. "Yes," she says. And then, for the first time in weeks, she smiles. It is small, but it stays. The next day, the wind returns from the west, bringing cooler air and the smell of distant fires. Someone has begun burning their old fields. The season is changing again, and for once she is not afraid, not of visitors, not of losing what little she has built, not even of the silence, because this life, this one shaped in dust and patience, is hers now. It does not belong to a man. It does not belong to a god. It does not need to be written into stone. It has already been carved into her hands, into the walls, into the breath between each task, and into the quiet that waits with her every evening as the stars return and the earth breathes again. The seasons turn in subtle shifts, not sudden movements. The day grows shorter, and with it the heat of the sun begins to recede, leaving behind a lingering warmth that clings to the earth. The girl finds herself waking earlier each morning, not because she must, but because the cold air whispers her name, as if the night has secrets it wants to tell her before it folds back into the sky. Each day the routine becomes more familiar. The chores flow in quiet harmony, one task seamlessly merging into the next. Water must be drawn, the goats must be fed, the fire must be stoked. There is no room for anything else. Not yet. The world, beyond the village, feels like a distant thing, separated by the endless hours of work, the small gestures that fill the space between each breath. Yet within this small rhythmic existence, there is a feeling that she has begun to carve something more than simple survival. Her hands, once soft and uncertain, have become calloused from the constant work, but they are strong. She moves through the days with purpose, never lingering too long on one task, never stopping to wonder if there might be something more. She knows, as women do, that the work itself is the purpose. The house is well kept, but there is something else now, something that wasn't there before. She has begun to fill the space with a quiet, unspoken sense of ownership. The walls, once only a shelter, now feel like part of her. The floorboards creak beneath her feet, as though they too are learning the rhythm of her movements. Even the roof, patched and weathered, seems to support her in its own silent way. It is hers now, as much as the earth beneath it. Neret has grown in ways that are both slow and fast. Her body is still small, but her mind is growing sharper with each passing day. She asks more questions now, and though the girl answers as best she can, there are times when she wonders if there will ever be a moment when Neret will stop asking. But that's the way of children. They learn through questions, through the endless pursuit of understanding. And so, the girl continues, offering answers when she can, remaining silent when she cannot. One evening, as they sit outside, Neret asks a question that catches the girl off guard. It is not about food or animals or the wind. It is something more, something that has been slowly building in Neret's heart, an understanding that is new to both of them. "Where do we go when we die?" Neret asks, her voice small but steady. The question lingers in the air, heavy with the weight of truth. The girl doesn't know what to say. She has never asked such things herself. She has been too busy surviving, too busy existing to wonder about the beyond. She has always known that death was part of the world, but she had never been forced to consider what it means. She looks at Neret, her younger sister, the child who has been with her through all of this, the child who watches her in the quiet moments, asking questions with eyes wide and searching, the child who has no memory of what came before, who does not know the things the girl carries with her every day. "I don't know," the girl says softly, the words more of an admission than an answer. I think we become part of the earth, part of the dust and the wind." Neret nods, as if this makes sense. "Like the trees?" she asks. "Yes," the girl replies, "like the trees." They sit in silence for a while, the weight of the question dissipating like a passing breeze. The stars are beginning to emerge, pinpricks of light scattered across the dark sky. The girl feels a strange comfort in the familiar sight. It is something that has been here longer than she has, something that will continue long after she is gone. In a way, the stars are like the earth. They are eternal, and they are not. The next few days pass in the same quiet rhythm. The house is still theirs, and every task is a reminder of that. But something shifts, subtly, as though the earth itself is preparing for something. She feels it in the air, in the way the wind changes direction, in the way the leaves on the trees rustle more loudly than they did before. She cannot name it, but she feels it. Then one afternoon a man arrives. He is tall, older than the girl, with the dark skin of someone who has spent many years in the sun. His robes are simple, but there is something about him that stands out. His eyes are sharp, and he carries himself with a quiet authority. The girl notices him before he speaks. There is something in his presence, a stillness, a weight, that makes her uneasy. He stops at the threshold, his eyes scanning the courtyard. Neret is playing nearby, her hands busy with a handful of reeds. The man does not acknowledge her, but instead looks directly at the girl. "I come for the land," he says. His voice is low, but it carries a weight of finality that makes the girl's heart skip a beat. "Mekhu's land." She doesn't answer immediately. She watches him, her hands at her sides waiting for him to continue. He steps closer, his sandals soft against the dust. "I am here to claim what is mine," he says, his tone flat but firm. "The land has been marked for years, but no one has claimed it. It is now my right." The girl feels a tightening in her chest. She knows what he is saying. She knows what it means. She has no claim to the land. She has no title. She is only the woman who survived. "You can't take it," she says, her voice a little sharper than she meant. The man raises an eyebrow, amused. "And why not?" "Because it is mine," she says, though she does not fully believe the words. Not in the way she should. The man studies her for a moment, and for a moment she feels as if he sees everything. The house, the land, the years of work she has put into this place. He sees it all, and he knows it means nothing. "Very well," he says, stepping back, "but remember, women cannot own land, not here." The girl stands there, rooted in the moment, until he turns and walks away. He doesn't look back, doesn't say another word. The silence between them feels thick, like the air before a storm. Neret comes to her side, tugging on her sleeve. "What did he say?" The girl takes a deep breath, looking down at her sister. "He wants the land," she says softly. "He says it's his." Neret frowns, a furrow between her brows. "But it's ours." The girl nods slowly. "Yes," she says, her voice low. "It is." She watches the man walk off into the distance, his form disappearing behind the tall grasses of the riverbank. She doesn't know what will happen next. She doesn't know if he will return with others to take what is rightfully hers, or if she will be forced to leave. But for the first time in months, she feels a flicker of fear, and she realizes, with a quiet clarity, that fear is not always a thing to avoid. Sometimes it is the thing that pushes you to stand tall when everything else is falling apart. The land may not be hers, not by law, not by title, but she will not give it up without a fight. The land sits quiet. No footsteps disturb its surface. The heat of the day settles on the earth like an old blanket, heavy and unmoving. The girl watches it from the edge of the courtyard, her hands pressed flat against the cool stone wall. She can feel the weight of the earth beneath her, solid and unyielding, as though it too is waiting for something to happen. She hasn't told Neret about the man yet. The girl hasn't said a word about his visit, about the claim he made, about the threat that hangs over them like a dark cloud. She isn't sure how to explain it. How to explain that there are forces outside of her control, forces that are bigger than her and more powerful than she can fight. She doesn't want to burden Neret with it yet. The child is still too young to understand, but there is no denying it now. The man's presence lingers like smoke. The words he spoke echo in her mind. Women cannot own land, not here. She has replayed them over and over, each time a little louder, a little more final. But she refuses to let them take root. She cannot let them take root. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. The world around her, the land, the house, all of it seems to be holding its breath. The girl rises slowly, her body stiff from the long hours of work. The evening chores await. Neret will need supper. The grain must be stored for the coming days. But as the girl turns toward the door, she hesitates. She stands still for a moment, listening to the quiet, to the soft rustle of the wind as it sweeps through the courtyard. She can hear the distant sound of birds returning to their nests, their calls high and soft against the settling dusk. She can hear the faintest ripple of water from the river's edge, but it's the stillness of the land that calls to her, the way it sits there, patient and unmoving. Her heart tightens. It is mine, she thinks, not as a claim or a declaration, but as a truth she knows deep in her bones. She walks into the house. The evening falls quietly around her, like the soft closing of a book. Neret sits at the low table, drawing lines in the dust. The girl's movements are smooth, measured. She sets about the tasks automatically, though her mind is elsewhere. Her hands move as they always have, preparing the meal, setting the small bowls of olives and dates, and pulling the flatbread from the fire. But all the while her thoughts are fixed on the land, on the man who came and the words he left behind. The sound of Neret's voice pulls her back. "Are we going to leave?" The girl glances up, her heart skipping a beat. Neret's face is innocent, expectant. She doesn't seem afraid, just curious. She doesn't know the weight of what she's asking. Not yet. The girl kneels beside her sister, brushing the hair back from her forehead. "Why would we leave?" Neret shrugs, a small, delicate movement. The man said it was his. The girl feels a knot form in her stomach. It doesn't belong to him, she says firmly. It belongs to us. But he said we couldn't keep it, that we weren't allowed. The girl doesn't answer at first. She simply looks at the child, her mind racing. She hadn't expected Neret to have picked up on it so quickly. She hadn't expected her sister to ask such a direct question. She had hoped, at least for a while, that Neret could remain unaware, could stay in the safety of their small world. But now that the question is out in the open, she can't ignore it. Sometimes, the girl says, her voice soft but steady, the world tells us we can't have things, but that doesn't mean we have to believe it. Neret looks at her, a small frown on her face, and for a moment the girl wonders if her sister truly understands. But then Neret nods and picks up her bowl of dates, quietly returning to her work. The girl watches her for a long moment, a heavy feeling settling in her chest. The night passes like most others, with little more than the occasional sigh of wind or the creak of wood. When the moon rises, it is full and silver, casting a soft light over the courtyard. The girl stands outside, staring up at it, her hands still at her sides. She thinks of the man, of his words, and of the quiet way he had claimed what was not his. She could almost hear it, the soft pressure of his presence against the edges of the world. But now, it is only silence. The next morning, she rises earlier than usual. The sun has yet to break the horizon, but the sky is already a soft grey. She stands at the edge of the courtyard, looking out at the land. The fields are quiet, but there is life there, in the soil, in the air, in the ripples of the river just beyond the trees. This land is not just dirt. It is life. It is memory. It is history. She knows in this moment that she cannot give it up. She cannot allow someone to simply take it from her. It isn't just a piece of earth. It is all she has. It is all she can call her own. The wind stirs again, brushing against her cheek, carrying the smell of the river. She steps forward, slowly at first, as though testing the ground beneath her feet. She walks toward the edge of the field where the tall grasses sway with the breeze. Each step feels heavy, as though she is moving through a world that is not yet ready to acknowledge her. When she reaches the river, she stands still, her feet sinking slightly into the damp earth. She reaches down, cupping her hands in the water, letting it slip through her fingers. The water is cold and clear, a sharp contrast to the warmth of the day. She watches the ripples spread outward, the way they grow, touching everything they come into contact with. She knows the man will return. She knows that someone will come to claim what is hers. But in this moment, in the quiet before the storm, she allows herself to believe that she will not give in. She will not surrender what is rightfully hers. For now, it is enough to stand here, beside the river, beside the land she has worked and lived for. She breathes in the cool morning air, feeling it fill her lungs, and she tells herself for the first time that she is not alone. The earth is with her. The water is with her. The very air she breathes is hers to keep. When she turns to walk back to the house, she feels the weight of her decisions settle in her bones. It is not a weight of burden, but of purpose. She has claimed this place. She will not let anyone take it from her without a fight. Later that day, the man returns. He is not alone this time. He is accompanied by two others, their faces hard and indifferent. They stop at the edge of the courtyard, their eyes sweeping over the land with the same calculating gaze as before. "I've come for what's mine," the man says, his voice low and firm. The girl stands tall in front of him, her hands steady at her sides. "It's not yours," she says quietly but with strength. "It's mine." and I will not give it to you." The man eyes her for a long moment, his face unreadable. He says nothing for a time, as though considering her words, weighing them against something more important. Then he steps forward, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "You are just a girl," he says, his voice flat. She stands her ground, refusing to step back. "I am more than that," she replies, and in that moment she realizes that it isn't just the land she is defending. It is herself. Her right to exist in this world, to claim what is hers, to make a life from the earth beneath her feet. The man's eyes narrow, and for a moment the girl wonders if he will strike. But then something shifts in him. The hardness in his eyes softens and he steps back. "Very well," he says, "but know this. The law is not on your side." The girl doesn't flinch. "The law does not own the land." The man looks at her one last time, then turns and walks away. His companions follow in silence, their steps quick and measured, and for the first time the girl feels something new. She feels the weight of victory. She does not celebrate. There is no cheering in the courtyard, no throwing of flower petals, no music or firelight or wild joy. That is not how victories happen here. In her world, victory is not an arrival. It is a continuation, a persistence, a quiet refusal to vanish. When the man leaves, when his feet and the dust he carries have finally faded into the path leading away from her home, the girl doesn't exhale in relief. She simply continues. She kneels. She cleans the ashes from the hearth. She lifts the water jar, pours half into the clay basin, and uses the rest to soak the lentils. She does not speak of what happened. She does not tell Neret. She does not carve a new line into the block of wood hidden beneath her sleeping mat, but her fingers that night move slower across its surface, tracing the grooves with a care that says, "I am still here," and that is enough. The days that follow are quiet. The world does not shift in any great way. The river continues to whisper. The roof continues to drip after the rare light rain. The neighbor's dog barks at shadows in the reeds. Men pass on the road. Indifferent. Women carry bundles of firewood, cast glances, and keep moving. But something beneath the surface has changed. She is no longer invisible. They begin to look at her differently. The neighbors, the traders, even the women who bring herbs to barter or ask for help preparing oils. There is a new shape to their words, a slight hesitation before they address her, a quiet consideration in their tone. As if something has shifted without them saying it aloud. They do not call her landowner. That would be too bold, too formal. But they no longer speak of her as just Meku's widow. They speak of her as the woman who stayed, the woman who held, the home. In Egypt, the gods are many and complex, but the world of women is ruled not by gods, but by patterns, by memory. And memory is a kind of power. She spends more time near the river now, not because she seeks answers, but because the river does not ask questions. It just moves, and it carries with it the same silence she has learned to live in. Each morning she walks to the water's edge. Neret often comes too, skipping ahead with her hands full of pebbles and small stories. The girl listens. She does not always respond, but she listens. Because that is how women protect each other, not with speeches, but with presence. One day, as she rinses the cloth that once belonged to her mother, a woman appears by the bend in the river. She's older, wrinkled at the edges like a well-used scroll. She carries herself slowly as though every step has meaning. They greet each other with a nod. No words, not at first. The older woman watches her work for a long while, then speaks. "You stayed. It is not a compliment, it is not a challenge, it is simply an observation. And in that simplicity it carries weight. "I stayed," the girl says. The woman kneels beside her, reaches into the water, lets it run over her hands. "When I was your age," she says, "I left, not by choice. My brother claimed the house. I went to the granary fields, spent 30 years kneading dough for priests who never learned my name." She does not say it with bitterness, just memory. "I would have stayed," she adds after a pause. "If I could." The girl says nothing, but the woman's words settle like warm stones at the base of her ribs. They sit in silence for a while. Then the older woman rises, wipes her hands on her robe, and walks back the way she came. And the girl, for the first time, begins to think, not only of staying, but of what it means to make something that lasts. That evening she begins to clear the storage room. It had once held only jars of dried herbs and bundles of old cloth. Things left behind by Meku. Things she had not dared touch. But now her hands do not tremble as she moves them. She empties the space, sweeps the corners, washes the walls, and begins storing her own things there. Dried flax, ground barley, bundles of reeds tied with red string, a small pouch of ochre powder, given by a trader in exchange for healing his wife's cracked heels. Each object holds no value on its own, but together they say, "I am preparing for a future." She begins teaching Neheret how to portion grain by weight instead of by guess. She shows her how to check for rot in the onion skins, how to rub oil into the stone basin to prevent cracking. Small things, but things that matter. And each evening, after the courtyard is swept and the fire is low, she carves. Not every night, only when the weight of the day stills her long enough. The woodblock is now full. Every surface bears marks, curves, figures, shapes. But still she carves, now onto new pieces, short lengths of bone, small shells, strips of discarded pottery. Anything that holds a mark. She does not know what they mean. She does not care. She only knows that they hold her, and perhaps that is all any story truly needs. One day, a man arrives, not the one from before. This one is younger. His hands are rough, his tunic frayed at the sleeves. He carries a basket of saltfish and speaks with a voice that cracks when he tries to sound certain. "I was told you trade," he says. The girl watches him. "Not with fear, just stillness, I do." He places the basket down. "I need oil, enough to last the week." She nods once, and they trade. He does not linger, but before he leaves he glances at her, then at the field beyond the wall. "Is it yours?" he asks. The girl does not hesitate. Yes, and this time when she says it, she believes it. He leaves without a word, but in the way he bows his head, not low but enough, she understands that the world has already begun to listen. She sits on the steps that night with Neheret curled beside her, fast asleep. The stars overhead are soft and slow. The fire in the hearth has burned low, and in her hands she holds the newest piece of carved bone, etched with the pattern of a field, a sun, and a woman standing beneath it. No name, no title, just presence, and for the first time she whispers to the wind, "I am not a visitor here. I am not waiting to be taken. I am what stays." The sun begins its descent earlier now, the light softening, deepening, as though the earth itself is preparing for sleep. The days have begun to shorten. The air carries a touch of chill, and the wind is more restless than it has been in months. The girl feels it in the way the earth cools beneath her feet, and the way the river moves differently now, as if it has grown tired of its quiet patience. She watches these changes, not with anticipation, but with an acknowledgement of their inevitability. The land continues to shift as it always has. The seasons change as they always do. But there is something else now, something unspoken, something that moves inside her as the winds shift. The house is still her own. Every corner of it speaks of what she has built with her hands. Every wall stands steady with the work of her body. But the feeling of ownership, of possession, has become something more than just a word. It is a quiet assertion of her place here, a truth that has settled into her bones. This land is hers, not because a man has claimed it or because a law says it is so, but because she has worked it, because she has lived it. Her fingers have begun to swell from work, the kneading of bread, the scraping of pots, the carving of bone, the lifting of water, all of it binding her to the world around her in ways that cannot be undone. Each morning she wakes before the sun and walks down to the river, the water cold against her ankles, the earth soft underfoot. There is a quietness in the air at that hour, a stillness that feels both like a memory and a promise. She fills the water jars, lifts them with practiced ease, and begins the walk back to the house. Neret is still asleep by the time she returns, curled beneath a thin blanket that barely covers her small body. She doesn't wake her right away. Instead, she sets the water down and begins to prepare the morning meal. A slow process of grinding grain, stirring lentils, kneading dough. The familiar routine grounds her, pulls her back into herself. When Neret does wake, it is with the quiet rustle of the blanket and the soft sound of bare feet against the floor. The girl watches her for a moment, her heart tightening with something she can't name. The child is growing faster than she realizes. Her face has changed, become less round and more like the faces of women the girl remembers seeing at the market. There is a softness to Neret's gaze, a stillness that the girl knows will not last forever. The thought makes her pause, just for a moment, before she turns back to the fire. She does not want to think about it. Not yet. But she knows that. One day Neret will be the one to carry the land forward. She will be the one to answer the questions the girl cannot yet answer. For now, the girl keeps her quiet. She does not tell her about the man who came or about the look he gave her when he asked if the land was hers. She does not speak of the fear that rose in her chest when he turned and walked away, or of the feeling that lingered after, the feeling that the land might slip away like sand in the wind, like water in the river. No, she does not speak of any of that. Instead, she focuses on the small things, the things that make up their days, the food, the work, the quiet moments spent together. She watches Neret, listens to her laughter as she runs through the courtyard, and wonders if the child can ever truly understand what it means to stand in the middle of something, to know that you have a place here. As the day passes, the house becomes a place of small rituals. The girl moves with purpose, cleaning the floor, organizing the grain, patching the roof where the sun has worn the thatch thin. The sun climbs higher in the sky, casting its long shadows across the courtyard, and still the girl works, the familiar rhythm of her actions pulling her forward. There are moments, though, when the weight of it all catches up with her. When the silence becomes too loud, when the stillness presses against her chest and she is reminded once again that there are no answers for the things she does not understand. She does not ask for help. She does not seek it. She simply carries on. In the evening, when the sun sinks below the horizon and the stars begin to emerge, the girl sits outside, the cool breeze brushing her face. She watches the sky, the same sky that has watched over the land for centuries, and she wonders what it would be like to be free of all of it, to have no responsibilities, to not have to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. But the thought is fleeting. She knows there is no escape. There never has been. She is here now, and she will remain here. Neret comes to sit beside her, holding a small bundle of reeds in her hands. She has been making something, though the girl isn't sure what. The child holds it out for her to see, her face glowing with the joy of creation. "I made this for you," Neret says, her voice small but proud. The girl takes it gently, unwrapping the bundle to find a small figure carved from the reeds. It is not much, just a simple shape, a few bends and twists, but the girl can see the care in it, the love. "It's beautiful," she says, her voice quiet. Neret smiles, her eyes shining. "It's for you, so you'll always have something to remember me by." The girl's throat tightens at the words. She takes the reed figure in her hands, holding it carefully, feeling the weight of it in her palms. The simplicity of it, the fragility of it, speaks to something deep inside her, something she cannot put into words. "I'll always remember you, Neret," she says softly. They sit together in silence, watching the stars begin to fill the sky. The night stretches out before them, quiet and endless, and for the first time in a long while the girl feels the weight of everything. The land, the house, the work, shift. For the first time she doesn't feel the need to carry it all alone, and so she sits there beside her sister, the cool wind brushing against her skin, and she knows that even if the world outside is uncertain, even if the land may one day slip from her grasp, there is still something here that cannot be taken, something that belongs only to her. The night deepens, the stars fill the sky, and the girl, for once, feels at peace. There is no need to fight, no need to prove anything. All she has to do is remain, to be present, to listen to the land, to the wind, to the river, and that, she realizes, is enough. The land does not ask for thanks. It does not bow its head when tended or stretch its arms to praise the ones who rise before dawn to care for it. The land simply waits, always still, always absorbing. The girl has long understood this. She does not speak to it with reverence or fear, but with routine, with bare feet pressed to soil, with fingers buried in the grain, with the steady grinding of stone against seed day after day. Winter approaches, though here winter is not snow or storms. It is the cooling of shadows, the taste of ash in the wind, the way clay stays damp longer. The river, sluggish and slow, pulls itself through the village like a tired limb. And at night, the stars arrive sharper, colder in their light, clearer in their judgment. The girl's body feels the change before her mind does. Her fingers crack more easily now. The skin on her heels splits if she doesn't oil it. And Neret has begun to wake in the middle of the night, pulling her blanket tighter around her shoulders, whispering dreams the girl cannot quite understand. Still, they continue. Each morning begins the same. The girl rises before the light, wraps herself in linen thickened by careful mending, and walks to the edge of the field. She does not expect anything from the land. She simply walks its border, watches for pests, notes the shape of the wind. This quiet circuit has become her ritual, not a prayer, not a performance, but a reassurance that she is still here. That all of this is still real. One morning on the far edge of the field she finds a feather. It is black and long, not from any bird she knows. It glistens faintly in the dim light, not blue or purple, but some shade in between. She kneels to pick it up, brushes it clean with the edge of her robe. For a moment she simply holds it in her hand, unsure what to do with it. Then she slips it into her sash and continues walking. She tells no one about the feather. But that night, she places it beneath the carved wood beneath her sleeping mat, not as a charm, not as protection, but as a mark of a day she wants to remember, even if she does not yet know why. Back in the village, things are shifting. The market grows quieter. Fewer traders come from the north. The neighbor with the olives has stopped her visits, her husband ill with fever. A boy from the other side of the river drowned last week, and the temple held a public rite. The priest spoke of the balance between life and the Nile, between death and the soil. The girl did not attend, but she heard the drums from her courtyard, soft and slow like a heartbeat. The world continues, even when no one asks it to. Neret has begun asking questions again. Not childish ones, not the kind that can be answered. With a nod or a distraction. "Why did father die?" she asks. The girl does not flinch. "He was old," she replies. "But some old men are still alive." She pauses. Then, "Not all bodies carry the same way." Neret nods, chewing her lip. "And what about mother?" "She died, giving birth." "Why did I live and she didn't?" The girl does not speak right away. She is quiet for a long moment, listening to the wind wrap itself around the corners of the house. Finally she says, "Because you were meant to." It is not truth, but it is enough. That night, the girl dreams of reeds, endless fields of reeds swaying under a dark sky. In the dream, she is walking through them, barefoot, the mud warm and wet between her toes. She hears someone breathing behind. Hers not chasing, not threatening, just walking the same path. When she turns, there is no one, only the reeds, parting and returning. When she wakes, she finds the feather has moved, not far, just out from under the carved wood, resting against the edge of the mat. As if it has something to say. She doesn't mention this to Neret either. Some things belong only to the ones who endure them. In the following days, the wind picks up. It tears at the thatch of the neighbor's roof. It stirs the ashes in the hearth before the fire is lit. It whispers in the late hours, curling between pots and jugs like a thing alive, and then the trader returns. Not the man who tried to claim the land. This one is different. Younger than she expected. Eyes lined with fatigue, mouth pulled tight as though he has not smiled in seasons. He does not enter the courtyard at first, simply stands at the gate. "I was told you keep good oil," he says. "I do. I'll trade." He carries resin, preserved figs, a tool for slicing grain. She inspects each item carefully, accepts the figs and the resin, declines the blade. Too thin, too short for her hand. They say little. But when he hands her the basket of figs, his fingers brush hers, not with intent, not with desire, just contact. It surprises her more than it should. That night, she cannot sleep. Not because of the man, but because of what his presence reminded her. The world is still wide. People are still moving. And one day someone may come who changes everything, again. She sits awake while Neret sleeps, watches the wall, thinks of the boy who drowned, thinks of the feather, thinks of how long it's been since she heard someone speak her name aloud. The wind lifts the edge of the curtain. She lets it. The next morning she bathes in the river. She does not rush. The water is colder than it's been in weeks. She submerges her arms, her legs, her chest, not in ritual, not for cleanliness, but to remind herself that she has a body, that she is alive, that her limbs carry weight and heat and muscle and story. She lets her hair dry in the sun, and then walks home barefoot, the clay clinging to her toes. When she returns, Neret is still asleep. The courtyard is silent. She steps inside. And for a moment, just a moment, she imagines someone years from now standing in this same doorway, looking at this same field, and knowing that once a woman stood here. Not powerful, not famous, just present. And that somehow it mattered. The first time she notices the change in the air, it is so subtle she almost misses it. It begins as a breath, a soft, almost imperceptible shift in the coolness that arrives in the evening. The wind carries with it the scent of distant sand and faraway fields, a smell that is new yet somehow familiar. The stillness of the night grows deeper, and for the first time she feels the ground beneath her feet hum with something she cannot name. She notices it one evening, just before the sun dips below the horizon, and she stands still, her hands folded across her chest, feeling the weight of the earth as if for the first time. It is a new season, a season of change, of quiet but inevitable transformation. The wind seems to speak in a language she does not fully understand, yet feels instinctively. For a long moment, she stands alone, in the quiet of the courtyard, listening to the land, feeling the subtle shift beneath the surface. She has always been attuned to these changes, to the pulse of the world around her, but now the weight of time, of patience, settles deep in her bones. It is not fear. It is not anticipation. It is simply awareness. She returns to her chores, but her mind lingers on the feeling. She cannot shake it, not completely. There is something stirring, something pulling at her from within, as if the world itself is beginning to reshape itself around her. The sky darkens, and for a moment she feels as though she could reach out and touch the stars, as though the vast expanse above her has become a part of her own breath. The days pass, and the feeling only grows. She has spent most of her life moving through the world without expecting much, moving through life as one does a well-worn path, following the steps laid before her, performing the work that needs to be done, surviving without asking for more. But now, as the days stretch, longer and the wind carries new whispers, she finds herself questioning what it all means. What is the point of all this? Is survival enough? It is a question she cannot answer, but she knows with a certainty that cuts through the uncertainty that she is not alone in asking it. Neret feels it too. The subtle changes in the air, the growing awareness of something beyond their small world. The child, still so young, looks at her more often now. Her eyes are not just filled with curiosity anymore. There is something deeper there, something knowing. It is the way children grow, slowly, unknowingly, into the person they will become. And the girl watches her sister with a quiet sadness. Neret will have to carry this world one day. She will have to carry the weight of what their family has built, the weight of this land, this place, these walls. The girl is not certain Neret will be able to, but she is not the one to decide, for now Neret is still a child, still unaware of the enormity of the world she will inherit, still able to laugh with abandon, to play in the dirt without thinking of the things that lie buried beneath. But the girl feels the weight of time pressing on her shoulders. She feels it in the way the days shift and in the way the seasons turn. It is a weight she has carried for as long as she can remember, but now it feels different. Now it feels like something is about to break, like a dam on the verge of bursting. And she does not know what will happen when it does. The wind continues to blow, each gust pulling at her thoughts, pulling at her spirit, urging her to move in some direction she cannot yet see. She is still rooted here, still bound to this land, to this house, to this life. But she cannot help but wonder where it will take her, what the future holds. That night she dreams. The dream is not unfamiliar, but it has changed. She is walking through the reeds again, as she has many times before. But this time the reeds are different, taller, thicker. The air is heavy, pressing against her chest. She cannot breathe easily. The ground is soft, shifting beneath her feet. And yet, she walks forward, driven by something she cannot name. She reaches the river, but the water is not as she remembers it. It is still almost stagnant, a mirror reflecting the sky above. She sees herself in the water, her face mirrored back at her, but there is something wrong. Her reflection does not match her movements. It does not move with her. It is still. She wakes with a start, her heart pounding in her chest, a cold sweat on her skin. The room is dark, the air cool, and for a moment she cannot breathe. But then the room is just as it always is, the familiar smell of wood and earth. Annegret's soft breathing in the corner. She listens to the rhythm of it for a long moment before she pulls the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She has always known that dreams are the mind's way of speaking to the soul. But this dream is different. It lingers in her chest, pressing against her heart, heavy and unshakable. It is a warning, a sign. She can feel it in the way the earth moves beneath her, in the way the air has shifted. She does not know what it means, but she knows it is important. The days that follow, the wind grows stronger. The land seems to shift beneath her feet. She feels it in her bones, the subtle tremor of something just out of reach. The world is changing, and she cannot stop it. She is not sure if she wants, so she continues with her daily tasks, but there is an urgency now, a need to prepare. The sense of time slipping away grows more pronounced, and every action feels heavier. She starts to make small changes in the house, moving things around, organizing, fixing the things that have been ignored for too long. The cracks in the walls, the rust on the pots, the patch on the roof. All of it feels more important now. Neret watches her closely, her questions growing more frequent. Her small, inquisitive mind begins to ask things the girl cannot answer. "Where did father go?" she asks one morning, as they sit by the fire, the light still low and soft. The girl looks up from her work, her hand stilling in the motion of stirring the stew. Neret's question hangs in the air between them, and for a moment the girl does not know how to answer. The truth feels too heavy for the child. The truth feels too empty. "He's gone to the river," the girl says quietly. "He is part of the land now." Neret nods, though the answer does not satisfy her. She looks at the girl with wide, searching eyes, but does not ask again. Instead, she returns to her play, her laughter filling the quiet space around them. But the girl does not laugh. She watches her sister, her heart heavy in her chest. Neret will have to carry this burden one day. She will have to take up the land and the house, the weight of survival, but not yet. For now, the girl works and Neret plays. For now she holds this space for them both. The sun sets earlier now, and the wind continues to carry whispers of change. The girl does not know where the future will lead. She does not know what will happen when the winds shift completely. But she feels the pull of it in her chest, and for the first time in a long while she knows one thing with certainty. She is not waiting for something to happen. She is shaping it. She wakes to stillness, the kind of stillness that feels too full, too quiet, as if the wind has stepped back, as if the earth itself is watching. The coals in the hearth are barely warm. The air hangs heavy, and outside the reed leaves barely. Sway! Something in the silence feels expectant, like a held breath. She doesn't speak. She dresses slowly. wrapping her shawl tightly across her chest before stepping into the courtyard. The sky is silver with dawnlight, a faded kind of beauty that promises neither joy nor sorrow, just presence. Neret is still asleep inside, curled, in her usual way, arms wrapped around a woven reed doll, her breathing steady. The girl pours water from the jar, washes her hands, and begins to sweep the floor. Her hands move with the same rhythm they always do, but her thoughts feel distant, stretched too far across time, as if she is walking in her own life, but from behind a veil, because she knows now. What has been building all along is no longer hidden. The season has changed, the wind has quieted, and something else is coming. Not a storm, not a man, not some external force, something within her. The last season was about staying alive. This one will be about becoming. She finishes sweeping and begins preparing bread. Her hands knead the dough against the cool stone. The motion is familiar, but today it feels heavier, sacred almost, like she's pressing her memory into the grain, like the flour remembers her mother's hands, like the warmth remembers her sister's laughter. Like her very survival is being folded into the soft layers. She places the bread on the clay to bake and sits quietly by the wall, resting her chin against her knees. She listens to the fire crackle. She listens to her breath. When Neret wakes, she does so softly. She walks into the courtyard, rubbing her eyes, and without saying a word, curls up beside the girl. They sit there together under the gentle morning sky. Eventually, Neret speaks. Why is it so quiet today? The girl doesn't answer at first. She looks at the small child beside her, the child who has become the only echo of her own past, the child who carries her mother's eyes and her father's silence, the child who will one day ask more questions. Then the girl can answer. "It's just the world resting," she says softly. Neret nods, satisfied for now. They eat their bread without speaking. Later that morning, the girl begins pulling apart the bundle of dried flax she had stored beneath the basin weeks earlier. She begins weaving. Not for trade, not for use, just to feel the shape of something becoming something else. Each strand threads under and over and under, and her fingers follow the pattern without thought. She has woven many things in her. Life, mats, rope, cord, once even a net for a neighbor's boy. But this is different. This is not a task. It is a way of remembering. She weaves and listens to the soft hum of insects returning now that the wind has stilled, to the distant sound of a pot breaking somewhere in the village, to her own heartbeat, steady, worn quiet. By midday she finishes the weave. It is a small mat, too small to sleep on, too small for eating, but when she lays it beside the door it looks like it belongs there. Later that day she walks the field again. It is not planting season. Nothing new will grow right now. But the field needs walking. It needs presence. Just. As she does, she moves between the furrows, feet pressing into hardened earth, breath slow. She moves the way a keeper does. Not as an owner, not as a visitor, but as one who knows that some things only live when they are seen. The soil is dry beneath her toes, but it remembers water, just as she remembers being a girl, standing at her mother's side, trying to understand the shape of the world through chores and shadows, just as she remembers her first bleeding, her first fear, her first silence. The land remembers everything, too. She reaches the far edge of the field where the tamarisk tree bends with age. Beneath its branches is the small grave where the dog was buried. She kneels there, brushes the dust from the stone and lays a few reed flowers beside it, not because the dog was sacred, but because he stayed. That night the wind returns, only for a moment, a small hush of air that passes through the courtyard like a breath. She lights the fire. Neret sleeps early. The stars come out in full, more than usual it seems. Their light clear. Cold. She pulls the carved block from beneath her mat. It is worn now, every edge etched, its surface a record of days, of trials, of endurance. Each groove, each line, each mark is a day survived. A chore completed. A silence kept. But tonight she does not carve, she just holds it, closes her eyes, listens, and as the fire cracks she hears her own voice, steady, but softer than she expected. I am still here. Not loud, not proud, just true. She thinks of the man who came to take the land. She has not seen him again. Maybe he will return. Maybe someone else will. But she no longer waits for the interruption. This land has already accepted her. It has shaped itself around her footfall, taken the shape of her silence. In the temple scrolls, women like her are not written. There are no names carved for girls who marry early, bleed young, bury husbands, raise sisters, sweep floors, barter for grain, and weave mats no one will ever sell. But this land has always been written by the ones who do not need names, by the ones who stay. And she has stayed, through grief, through hunger, through every long afternoon where no one said her name. She has stayed. And that, in the end, may be the only thing that matters. When the fire burns low and the shadows lean long across the courtyard wall, she places the carved wood back beneath her mat. She tucks the black feather into the folds of cloth beside it. And for the first time in many nights, she lies back and lets herself rest before sleep. She does not think of tomorrow. She does not think of what will come. She just breathes. She just exists. She just listens to the land breathing with her. And, as the stars shimmer silently overhead, she understands what it means to belong to something without needing to possess it. What it means to live without permission. What it means to shape a life that no one else can see, yet still matters, because it was lived fully, quietly, and entirely hers. Good night.